let's elaborate further on arrays using the Python programming language. Again, the key function in creating an array centers around the append function. This function is really a special method that has to be associated with an object. To make that association, we use the object name followed by the period or the dot followed by append. And what we're telling the computer to do is to append or add an item to the list called name. The format statement used inside of this input statement is just telling us to display it a particular way. As I said before, enter the name of the customer and it's going to indicate the index. In this case, it would normally be 0. Now I'm going to take out this 1 so that you will see what I'm talking about when let's run the program or execute the program again. And you notice it says enter the name of customer number 0. And we'll put in Walls, comma, Courtney, Foster, comma, John, Lane, comma, Beth, Adams, comma, Joseph, Brown, comma, Susan, Clark, add that K now, Brent, Don, comma, Chris, and I'll just make up some more names, Johnson, comma, Jim, Baker, Mary, Miller, Cheryl. And once I press the enter key, the computer will display name is the name of the array or the list. The first item in the list is number 1. That's the address or the element. That's how we reference this. That's the variable name that we use, but inside of memory it's stored the Walls, comma, Courtney. Likewise for the second item in the list, Foster, comma, Johnson, name, Lane, comma, Beth. The fourth item in the list, Adams, comma, Joseph. Fifth item, Brown, comma, Susan. 6, Clark, Brent. 7, Dunn, Christopher. 8, Johnson, Jim. 9, Baker. And 10, Miller, comma, Cheryl. But here I took away that +1 and it started the index at 0. The reason for this was just to have more available addresses for memory, starting from 0. 0 to 9 means I really have 10 elements in the list. I'm going to change this back to a +1 so that it displays as the first item. Likewise, if I had taken this off when I printed the list, it would have shown count subscript 0. And notice when we use a while loop, we start and we're just assuming that we were placing 10 items in the list, and we have to navigate, go to the next item in the list. That's how we navigate, traverse, or point to the next item in that list. Count equal to count +1, whether it be printing or reading. This is the first time that you've seen where we can store more than one element inside of a variable name. And that's where the super variable or the list or the array concept lends itself. Now, again, when I write the list, I have to restart or reset the beginning of my counter, which is 0. Again, when I use the format, that's just to tell it to display a certain way and align the list to the right so that the values will be right aligned. Again, when we run the program, you're going to see what I'm talking about momentarily. And let's add the names to the list as we did before. So the same values I entered in the array, when I displayed them again, that's exactly what the computer stored. Now all of this is being stored in memory, in the memory of the RAM memory of our computer. But the good news is once I created this list, I can use either a predefined function to sort that list in alphabetical order. I can search through the list. A litany of operations can be performed because I now have a list of items. Now, if I wanted to add some flexibility in the program, I can just say create a list of names, take off the 10. Wherever it says 10, it may not necessarily be 10 items in the list. To do that, though, what I'll have to do is come up with another way to interact between the user and the program itself. So I would say something like this: num items is equal to, and because I'm asking for a number or a quantifiable number, it has to be an integer. Integer input, how many names do you wish to enter? And that would be used, that's establishing an ending value for my test. And instead of me using the constant 10, I'm going to say num items. I will do the same when it comes to displaying the items in the list. Now that we've added a little bit more flexibility, when you use a variable name, it allows the program to be a little bit more dynamic depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the user to enter, to establish the number of names he or she wishes to enter. And then that would affect the loop. Count, is it less than num items? Okay. And we're going to use that where we are displaying the results. I added an open and closed line just to surround the value to bring a little bit more attention to that particular display. Okay, so let's run the program. This time, what it does is it asks us, how many names do you wish to enter? I'll say 5. Walls, comma, Courtney. Foster, comma, John. Lane, comma, Beth. Adams, comma, Joseph. And Brown, comma, Susan. Press the enter key, and you notice it did enter those names. That's what's in my list. If you neglected to initialize variables in the past, it will catch up with you because the program will give you error messages if you do not initialize variables. Count is a variable that must be initialized in this program. Whenever you're creating a new array, it must be set to empty when you're entering data via the keyboard. Pay attention to every line. Make sure you understand the purpose for each one. It is imperative when you're using constructions, control constructs, that certain pieces of information that has to be executed must be indented. While this statement is true, whatever is to be repeated or performed must be indented. Normally, we start at column 0 and we indent at column 4, and then 8, 12, 16, 20, etc. But it is imperative that what is going to be executed must be indented. To update the index, that must be indented within this loop. And of course, the loop ends right here. Place a comment there. Likewise, when we are displaying our information, reset your counter to 0. You can skip lines to, just for readability's sake. Add these dash lines just to bring attention to your output. And then here's our loop. We print. We go to the next item. That must be there. If this is left out and it's not indented, you will end up with an infinite loop or a loop that doesn't work properly.